Hello and welcome to SBK Unplugged, Sheldon Bosley Knight's land and property podcast. My name is Kate Gould and I'm the host of the show. Today I am joined in the studio by Mark Treadwell, who's our Director of Professional Services and who heads up our commercial department, and Katie Taylor, who is our Commercial Property Manager. Welcome to you both. Lovely to have you in the studio today.
Hello.
Before we get down to business, I would like to thank again One Mill Street for hosting us in their amazing studio. Thanks, guys, for having us again. So, Mark and Katie, lovely to have you with us. I want to talk all things commercial today and find out a bit more about your department, what you guys do on a day-to-day level. I'm sure it's not just sort of renting and selling commercial units, but if you can enlighten us on all of that, that would be great. A bit about the future of the market, the state of the market currently, and a bit about the Rick's Red Book, which I know absolutely nothing about, but I'm hoping you can enlighten me.
Yes.
But before we start, I'd like to find out a bit more about how you both got into land and property and how you both came to Sheldon Bosley Knight. So who wants to go first? Mark, you can go first.
Okay, thank you. I worked in property and the construction industry for 20 plus years, but I didn't come to become or the chartered surveyor you see today until relatively late in my career. It was probably I got to 27 and realised actually I could keep doing facilities maintenance type work forever, but not really progress. So I took myself off to the College of Estate Management, got myself the relevant degree, and then I found a different job to help me with the training element, to do the APC, Assessment of Professional Competence, which would enable me to then take my interview to become a chartered surveyor. I was very fortunate to get a job just before the last recession with Warwickshire County Council.
Mm-hmm.
They trained me up. It was fantastic proving ground, wide range of property interests and transactions, and haven't looked back since. And it is to my horror that I realised that this year I will have been qualified 13 years.
Oh, amazing.
Which seems like the blink of an eye.
Yeah.
So that academic and industry-based experience route is the same route that trainees and apprentices take today.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of come full circle that we're teaching Jenny, our apprentice, to do that same route, and I'm teaching her the same things that the techniques I learned 13 and a bit years ago.
And how did you come to Sheldon Bosley Knight? Was it immediately from Warwickshire County Council, or did you have any job in between?
No, so I was working in private practice, so I moved out of local authority into private practice for about 5 years in between, and somewhat ironically, I moved into private practice for a firm based in central Coventry, which I'm sure we'll talk about in a minute. And then in 2018, I was approached by Sheldon Bosley Knight to move from that firm to go and be the successor to lead up the commercial team, which was a far different entity than the one people will find today.
Mm-hmm.
So I was brought in to sort of take over the reins and grow the business.
Mm-hmm. And what about you, Katie?
So I've worked in property just shy of about 10 years. So I started off working in residential property, had worked in multiple departments, whether it was just dealing with like the front end, doing lettings, and then also property management. And I kind of sat with property management maybe nearly 9 years ago now. And I just thought it was good at it. I like looking after the bricks and the mortar of buildings, and I'm good with people, so I enjoy dealing with tenants on a daily basis, landlords on a daily basis, visiting them, seeing what the issues were, seeing how I can help solve the problems. And it kind of progressed, and it was roughly about 3 years ago, I started working for a chap who owned multiple commercial units and residential property, so I had to learn the commercial side in addition. So it's kind of like helped me feed into everything that I do at SBK now, really. So I realised that I preferred the commercial world, to be honest. Businesses, dealing with businesses. I loved everything with SBK, so that they were offering, so kind of moved over to do this. It was great.
And when did you come over to SBK?
About 7 months ago now.
Oh, amazing. And you're enjoying it so far?
Yeah, really enjoying it. It's a really nice team, and I like the portfolio too of just dealing with properties all over Warwickshire, Leamington, Stratford, Evesham. There were some really nice properties.
What was it about commercial property that kind of excited you more than residential? Was it just the sort of the business element of it, or the people behind the businesses?
I think the people behind the businesses, to be honest, I've had to learn a lot over the past 3 years, and I'm still learning today. I think I have to call Mark every day to ask him a different question, whether it's something small or something big. I'm just like still learning.
In fairness, I think you know the answer most of the time. You're just looking for that little bit of reassurance.
Yeah, so I'll get there at some point, but I think it's I like dealing with the business side of things now, and again, like I say, just a lot to learn, and I'm thoroughly enjoying that.
Excellent. So the commercial department, now you're, I suppose, not a massive team, but you've got sort of 5 counties to deal with, and obviously we've gone through several acquisitions in the last year. But you don't just do sort of commercial sales and lettings. I mean, there must be kind of more to it than that. So tell me a bit more about the department, what you guys do on a day-to-day.
The way I describe it to people look from the outside looking in is within Sheldon Bosley Knight, we are effectively a firm within a firm. As you quite rightly say, the bit that most people might see from the outside is the agency side of the business. So that's the letting and the sales. But in addition to that, we do commercial property management, which Katie's here representing. We will do the professional services that arise out of those commercial transactions. So the lease renewals and rent reviews, which are far more technical and in depth than our colleagues in residential may be, which is governed by a very simple yes/no process on the part of the tenant. And part of the professional services also, we'll come to shortly, the Red Book valuations, the RICS International Valuation Standards, governed valuations. And then lastly, but no means least, as of a year ago, 18 months ago, we had Steve Bell come on board with us, and his principal focus was to sell businesses as going concerns, traders as going concerns that we hadn't previously done before, which I guess that was the last small piece of the jigsaw that we hadn't been able to offer previously, which we now can. So we offer a comprehensive range of services to the client to give the right advice at the right time. And
talk to me about the Rick's Red Book then, because
I know you've been dying to ask me about that.
Well, because I don't know what it is, and it sounds really kind of obviously professional and important. But yes, so tell me about it.
Okay, so to give it some context, the valuation, the formal written valuations, that's what we're talking about. Anyone asks for a Red Book valuation, it is a formal written valuation, which forms just part of our offering. It's my personal preferred method of deriving fee income for the firm and offering services to clients. That's my own coalface day job part. It's called the Red Book, RICS International Valuation Standards, because originally it was in hard copy. I think all the way back to the 70s it came out in a book with a red hardcover. But the number of changes that have happened over the years that's so regular that actually now it's just, it's effectively an online resource. But it's a set of rules that is put in place to ensure consistency and protect the consumer. To make sure that the valuers are applying the rules for that area of the country, that area of the globe, in a consistent way that can be understood by the users of those valuations. It is, if you printed it out, it is a document that's that kind of thick.
Oh my goodness.
3 or 4 inches thick, because the rules change, and there's different rules for different segments of the commercial property market, because it's, and we'll get onto this, but the commercial property market's not one homogeneous piece of property. It's so diverse, and that's I suppose that's why I'm interested in it personally. It's there's so many different parts of the commercial property market which keep it interesting. I suppose the formal written valuation is something people phone up the firm and say, "I'm selling my house. Give me a valuation." Well, the chartered surveyors amongst us will say, well, actually, the whole world calls it that, but that's a market appraisal.
Right.
And that is not covered by the Red Book. That is the single exception from a Red Book valuation. So a formal written valuation, I'll give you an example. This morning I was in Bicester in Oxfordshire. I was engaged by a bank to go and look at a residential property for secured lending. Now that's governed by the Red Book. That's at the sort of the top end of the formality, I suppose, because it's for lending. So I've inspected the property. I'll report on it. My report will be sort of 30 or 40 pages, covering everything to do with the valuation, matters that affect the valuation of that property. And the bank will rely on that report to lend money to the purchaser. So that's why, as a company, we have professional indemnity insurance to cover that sort of eventuality. Hasn't been touched just yet, but that's part of it. Other reasons for formal written valuations: purchase and sale, inheritance tax, capital gains tax. I do quite a lot of single joint expert work for court. For example, matrimonial disputes. The parties will agree on a single joint expert, and I'll file a report with the court, and they will deem that to be the agreed valuation between the party. All my valuations are right, but when you know they're going to be in front of a court, they're more right than all the others.
Yeah.
So that's, I'm waxing lyrical because that's I've spent 12 years doing that, and I really enjoy it. But that's now just really a small part of the wider offering.
And Katie, when you go out to businesses, what sort of commercial properties are you dealing with? Are they businesses, or are they sort of warehouses, or or is there a trend at the moment, or is it just very varied and you see loads of different things during the week?
I see a lot during the week, to be honest. We deal with everything from historic shops listed or grade 1 listed buildings in Stoneleigh over to trading estates in Warwickshire, just a little bit of everything, to be honest. So some of them are factories, some of them are shops, some of them are small little corner shops. It really does vary.
And what are the sort of things that you'd be working on? Is it sort of an extension of a lease, or is it perhaps somebody wants to sell or to rent it out? Is there is there more sort of variety in your job, or is it sort of quite samey?
I would say there's a lot of variety in the job, especially because of the type of businesses that we deal with and the type of properties that we're dealing with. For example, last week I found myself on top of a roof in Stratford-on-Avon.
Oh my goodness!
Dealing with roof repairs, a roof replacement, dealing with flat roofs, the gutters, pitched roofs, a bit of everything there, all the way down to the water meter, just something small like that needs looking into. So literally everything to do with the maintenance of the building, all the nooks and crannies. I've kind of had to master that over the last few years. So I know how a roof is built, but I won't do it myself.
So you actually get on the roof and you see what the problem is. Oh my goodness, that's amazing.
Every time there's an issue, especially if I'm in the area, I'll always go out to try and have a look, see what the issue is, see if it's a quick fix, think who would be the best contractor for this job, and then kind of see that through from start to finish. So I'd meet with contractors, see who would be the best person, get quotes, and then see that through all the way to invoicing on behalf of the client, because that's what they want. They don't want to deal with that, which is understandable.
That's amazing.
And actually, that's the wider point is that all of our jobs are best served and giving the best advice to the client by being knowledgeable about what that particular issue is. If it's property management, you can advise better if you've seen it yourself, and that means if you have to go up on the roof with the contractor, you go and do it.
So we do walkthroughs to check the standard. There's a certain extent that I can check that because I'm not a builder, but some of it's quite obvious that you want to make sure that you're doing right by the client. If there's anything that rings a bell or is of concern, we've got like really good contracts on the book, so I can give a call, get a second opinion, and go from there. Really.
So in that kind of scenario, are they mostly sort of older buildings that you'd maybe have to sort the roof out? Because obviously in this area we've got quite a lot of history. I guess there are quite a lot of listed buildings. I mean, I presume that the rules are different with a listed building about what you can and can't do. Yeah. But is it mostly old buildings that you deal with in this sort of scenario, or is it a real mixture?
It can be a real mixture. Sometimes it could be that there was a storm and it's caused some damage, for example, or there might have been a fire that's caused damage. So we have to go through the insurance and work through to check everything's okay before tenants can move back in. So we have to do a little bit of everything.
Wow. And do you need any kind of qualifications to sort of go up on a roof, or to know what to look for, or is it? I mean, because it's. I mean,
well,
probably should, but no.
I mean, we're always going to do it safely. We're not going to put ourselves at risk.
Yeah.
But part of giving proper advice is to know when you've reached the limit of your own knowledge.
Yeah.
And to say, right, okay, well, this is beyond our capabilities. We're going to recommend we employ a suitable specialist. So we'll have contacts with the relevant qualified building surveyors if need be, or the relevant roofers if need be. So again, we won't blindly charge in and say, oh, well, we think it's this if we don't actually know, because that's part of making sure we're giving the right advice to the client.
Well, it sounds like you have a very exciting job. I'm not sure I'd want to go up on the roof, though. Thank you very much. But...
It is good, and I think every day is a learning day. Sometimes that's why I'm just out all the time. Like yesterday, just meeting with tenants, seeing what the damage is, trying to work out where it's coming from, or if there's anything I can do that might be a quick fix, save the landlord some money. But like I say, it could be... the age of the building doesn't matter. Maintenance happens everywhere, to be honest. So I have to work on that. But then I do also deal with or assist with like the lease renewals. This is another part of the business that I'm currently learning, and I'm getting training from both Mark and my colleague Jenny, who's brilliant. So we're going to hopefully pick up all of that soon as well. So
and is the market quite buoyant at the moment? I mean, we hear reports all the time about the high street, on its knees because shops are closing and that kind of thing. But is that your experience locally, or is it a bit more nuanced than that?
Yes, and the short answer is yes, it is very much more nuanced. It's, again, the commercial property is not one homogeneous blob. There are different sectors, in terms of asset classes. So you've got the retail sector, you've got industrial sector, you've got the office sector, all have their own different vagaries. And then, of course, you've got, take even one sector like the retail sector. You mentioned the high street. Well, for example, Stratford-upon-Avon High Street actually is probably fairly resilient because of the circumstances of why people want to go there. But then you go less than 20 miles away to another market town in the neighbouring county, and it's really dire. Yeah, you've got the 4,000 square foot high street retail shops, which are difficult to let under any circumstances, and those occupiers that do want to be in those locations still, as opposed to the out of town retail parks, are saying, well, we're just going to name our price. We don't care what you want, landlord. This is, if you want us in your building, this is what we're paying. Yeah, and that's a difficult environment, and the speed to which a client understands that and adapts depends whether they are successful and they have a business or a community use or a change of use in their building, or whether it's empty. Yeah. And actually that change of use, I mean, that, we talk to our planning colleagues quite a lot about, where clients struggling with this particular property, can we help them with a change of use? For example, can we turn the upper floor of this retail unit that's very negligible value in retail terms, can we turn it to residential use? Yeah. Can we turn the offices in this upper floor into a residential use, which would be more valuable and find an occupier far more quickly? Yeah. So it's, again, coming back to give the client the right advice. Yeah. And that means talking to the colleagues who've got the experience in that sector, in the planning or the new home sector, to give the client the timely advice. Well, it's a good time to maybe talk about our other departments, because obviously a multidiscipline business that we do have planning, new homes, auctions, and I guess you probably then do deal with them on a pretty much day-to-day basis, do you? Yes, I mean, by chance, the auction team, for example, are situated in the same building as we are, and Matt very eloquently spoke about auctions a couple of weeks ago, and the commercial team and the auction team have, in the year since Matt set the auction team up, done a lot of work together, because again, we're offering the client, what is it you need to achieve? It's not sell a property, it's what do you want to achieve first, and then you get to the how do you want to sell it, and so there's a lot of crossover between what we do, and I'm glad to say, and certainly in the first year we had a lot of success because we took that approach, and it works both ways, because they can come to us and say, well, what do you think about this lot? Because the vast array of commercial properties, there's no two that are the same, even if they're sat next to each other. There's going to be a different scenario. One could be vacant, one could be let to a national covenant. And on the face of it, the buildings are worth the same. But actually, they're not, though, because one's occupied by a high street retailer and one's vacant. So they'll come to us and say, well, where should we pitch this? And we can give an opinion, certainly.
So how do you fit in with sort of new homes then? I know obviously the planning and architecture team, like you mentioned, thinking about change of use aspect for a building perhaps, but what about new homes? How do you fit in with them?
Well, again, it comes down to this change of use idea in the sense that certainly Nick has approached me several times. He's got a client at the moment where they had planning permission. Well, they have planning permission for a change of use on the upper floor in the centre of a town centre. And they were looking for an alternative scheme because they were wondering, did that stack up? Do we want to make sure, can we broaden the appeal because we want to offload the freehold interest? So Nick asked my opinion, can we change tack on this a bit? And similarly, if Nick's looking at an office development, I think one that comes to mind, he's got an older office development in Kenilworth. He says, Mark, what's this worth today? Ignoring any potential development. So you've got a sort of a day one value for it from which they can then calculate the gross development value once they've done the conversion to see if it's worth their while doing.
So you work quite closely with those three departments. Any of the others, sales, lettings, you work with them at all, or is that more minimal?
We're fortunate that we advise some large estates that have portfolios that cross many different sectors. So the SBK rural team take the lead on a number of estates because there's farmland, farms. But then within those estates, they'll also hold commercial property. For example, they've got a retail parade and some fairly newly built industrial units. So we'll take the lead and advise on those. But we'll sit down and make sure we sort of have regular conversations to ensure that we're giving constructive and directed advice to the client that's not conflicting.
And so the future of the commercial market generally, do you think it's in reasonable fettle at the moment? Do you see it continuing to be in good fettle, or are there challenges that you foresee in terms of maybe legislation coming through or any other challenges?
How's the commercial property market going at the moment is a common question. It's often a conversation that comes up with market appraisals when we go out to see commercial clients for the first time. And my answer is it's relatively buoyant in our sector in our part of the world. It is very price sensitive though.
Yes.
So there is still a certain mismatch between vendor expectations and buyer behaviour. And in terms of where it's going, I'm probably not reinventing the wheel to say that I think there's a lot of people waiting for a little drop in the interest rates.
Yeah.
And I think that might unleash a little bit more of the latent demand. There's still people sort of holding their fire a little bit unless the price is right. But there's still a lot of activity. Our agency part of the business has been very active. And going back to the valuations, if I'm doing a lot of valuations, that means something's happening in the property market because people are lending on it. So, I mean, we operate in the West Midlands, Warwickshire, Worcestershire, Gloucestershire. So a lot of the headlines you'll read will be about the super prime stuff in central London, and if Amazon's left a warehouse in central London, the world's coming to an end. But actually, the reality is no, it's buoyant and people are doing things, but it's nuanced, it's sector based, and it's price based. Yeah, it has to work.
And I suppose, I don't know how it affected or was affected by COVID. Was there any sort of dip in demand or activity during COVID, or was it sort of quite steady?
For a short period, it changed the way a lot of companies wanted to occupy property. Certainly. I mean, if you ignore the bit where we was not supposed to be doing anything, if you ignore that, yes, it kind of exacerbated the scenario in retail premises. Like, well, we're never going to open again. It was the kind of opinion, and that rents took a nosedive, as did regional offices. If people aren't going to the office, why do we want to rent an office? And that's coming back up the other side. That's changed a little bit in the sense that those companies that don't want a 10,000 square foot office because they don't want everyone in the office at the same time, they only want people in 3 days a week. Well, okay, they'll take a 5,000 square foot office. Or the larger companies that are taking regional HQs, they've got a time span where they're thinking beyond the middle term. They're thinking 10, 15 years. So they're like, well, we want that to secure that building in that location now. And actually, the immediate noise is of less importance to us. So it changed the way people work, the way people think. And actually, one of the biggest things to come out of the pandemic, and I'd like to think it wasn't linked, but the change in planning use came out in September 2020. That meant that actually there's far more freedom for commercial properties to be used. The new Class E, I call it new, it's 4 years old now. So people could use shops for any number of businesses and vice versa, which gave a little bit more freedom. It's not quite reinvigorated the high street yet, but we'll see. So yeah, the short answer is yes, there was a dip. It's more of a change in focus, I think. The one sector that went through the roof is the industrial sector. I mean, it was already going great guns before COVID, and it just absolutely accelerated. Because supply and distribution, everyone's at home ordering stuff. Well, that's got to come from somewhere. Yeah. It's in a warehouse next to the motorway. So to this day, there's vast undersubscribed of industrial land available to build on, or even finished units to buy. So with limits, you can almost write your own check once you've got some land to produce industrial units on.
Yeah. And is that what you're seeing with the industrial units, the growth?
Yes,
there?
They never sit empty. If we're doing kind of rent reviews, I can only say they really do going onwards and upwards every period. So that's kind of my side of it so far, working for this business. Yeah.
Oh, amazing.
It's all positive.
Yeah, excellent. So any other sort of trends that you've noticed recently?
I can see that landlords have definitely got more creative, I think, with the change of use coming in. Also, just, as a pedestrian, you walk past, I'm seeing old offices that have now got gyms in, a lot more kind of like dog cafes and businesses that pre-COVID I never really noticed as much, or never seen as much. But I find that it's opened up this creative space, I suppose, for people to kind of expand their businesses without it costing them an arm and a leg.
But reinvigorated the high street, I guess, or, the spaces in which the towns in which we live in. That must be quite exciting for you and adds a bit of extra sort of difference and, to your job.
Yeah, I really enjoy it. So working with all different types of businesses now and seeing, it's quite nice if a tenant is to leave, there's usually only a small gap now that I see that the properties are vacant. And when a new tenant goes in, normally they might have like a Pilates studio or something that I've never dealt with before. And I find it quite interesting to get to know them, their business, why they moved to that unit, what appealed to them, so that we know going forward what we can advise and who if a Pilates studio called up and said, I'm looking for a space of this, we can say, actually, I've got a unit that will suit you perfectly, which maybe this time 10 years ago, they wouldn't have had the same recommendation.
And again, taking that to the bigger picture, it's giving the right advice. And something I'll bang on about, that the property industry is only 50% about property. The other 50% is about people. And if you aren't asking those questions that Kate's quite rightly pointed out, you don't know what they actually need to properly target the advice you're giving and the options you're putting in front of them.
Yeah, but that's presumably comes down to sort of skill and experience and, having that knowledge that's on the job knowledge, I suppose. And in terms of the creative uses that you're seeing, is there a kind of trend for particular uses? Like you mentioned Pilates, is that like a growing thing, or is it sort of well-being little hubs, or is it just a whole manner of different kind of creative enterprises that you're seeing?
I think well-being is probably a good way of putting it, to be honest. You see a lot more kind of like cafes like 1 Mill Street where you can come in and sit and work, have a coffee. It's a nice environment. It's a big thing since COVID now that people want to be out of the house. They want to sit in an office or sit in an office environment and just get on with their work
but be with people, I guess, as well, because that's very much what it is here, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like, but they want that sort of flexibility. Which...
Yeah, absolutely. I see a lot more yoga studios, Pilates, that indoor plant shops. I've seen a couple more of those which I've never seen before. So yeah,
we've just let a former office. It was an office in a rural area of Warwickshire, previously a solicitor's office. We've just let to a yoga studio.
Oh, amazing!
Because it's the sort of environment they want to be in. You know, you've got a pleasant grassed courtyard, so you've got some outdoor lesson space, bit of peace and quiet. You're in the Warwickshire countryside, and it's a business model I would assume that will works for them. Yeah, works for the business owners.
It's a lot more convenient for people as well. I think it can make for a more successful business being that convenient on the high street, for example.
Yeah.
So that's we've seen a lot more like high street gyms and whatnot.
So in the last year or so, we have expanded as an organisation quite considerably, and most recently with another 180-year-old business, Love It, which you started at, I believe, or
well, that's right. I mean,
you referenced in your introduction.
I alluded to earlier. That was where I got my grounding in private practice and property valuation.
But that must be quite a big thing, because obviously they've got a commercial department as well. So how has that all kind of not necessarily impacted you, but how has it been for you to sort of integrate the two departments together? And what does it mean? What does it mean going forward? Because I mean, it's obviously an expansion.
It's a significant expansion, and of the recent firm acquisitions that we've been party to, it's the one that's affected the commercial department the most. Because the commercial department within Love It is so strong and so offers such a wide range of services to its existing client base. That's predominantly what I've been working on in the last 3 months, is the reorganisation of the two teams and how we're going to work moving forward. And it's a similar service. The agency side, sales and lettings, commercial property management, professional services for rent reviews, lease renewals and valuations. But we're covering a larger patch. We're stretching from the north of Birmingham out to the east side of Leicester, and now all the way down to the Cotswolds. So it's taken our patch to sort of 9 counties across 16, 17 branches.
Gosh.
And certainly within the commercial department, expanded the headcount as well, and we're having an organisation to take that into account to make sure we're doing things consistently, effectively, and still giving the right advice, but managing the team so that we're well organised and efficient.
So going well so far, and enjoying the challenge.
Fingers crossed. I'm asking members of the team to do things that they haven't done yet, and their roles will change for the better, hopefully. We're doing some recruiting to fill some empty chairs, to make sure that, again, we are adequately resourced to do the job properly.
Yeah. But sounds like we're becoming a bit of a powerhouse in the Midlands, certainly within commercial and as one of the major departments.
Well, I'd like to think so. I mean, we've certainly got excellent level of turnover. We've got the dedicated staff in the relevant parts of the business to do that. So I'd like to think we could give the right advice to the clients, and it was certainly a powerhouse in terms of numbers, turnover, properties under management. I mean, I think we've gone from 200 properties under management to a total of 600, 700.
Oh my goodness.
Probably.
Who can be busy?
Well,
luckily they do have some property managers with a lot of experience there, which is really helpful to me as well, to be able somebody else I can pick the phone up to and say, I've got this one, it's a bit quirky, what would you recommend? And that's what I really like as part of the team, is this expanding.
But it's useful because you also get a sort of economies of scale, because when you're recruiting into a position, you then a larger entity which attracts more talent. So it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, because you've got someone that people want to work for because they know of you, they know the brand, and go, actually, that looks like a good place to work.
Yeah.
And I know I'm Katie's boss and I'm sat here, but she was saying some very kind things about the firm as we started. And I'd like to think we can project that and say, look, come for work for us.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much, both of you, for coming in to have a chat. It's been really brilliant to see you. And thank you very much. And thank you so much for joining us today on the podcast. We'll see you again next time. Thank you.